We've got Babes, Blood, and Foil. Ah, the 90s. Hello and welcome to the weekly vmcampos Comic Book Club. I'm your host, vmcampos. This is the series where I review a comic book, new or old, from my collection. This week I'm reading Vengeance of Vampirella #1, published by Harris Comics in 1994. Don't forget to check out the Patreon, patreon.com/vmcampos, for all my uncensored videos. For $3.33 a month, you won't be disappointed. So a little bit behind the scenes background information as usual. I'm reviewing Vengeance of Vampirella, published by Harris Comics. Harris Comics, yeah, they haven't been around for a long time. They were publishing Vampirella in the 90s after she lay dormant for a while. Vampirella is a character that debuted with Warren magazines in 1969 and went for around 112 issues or so from 1969 to 1983. She was extinct for a little while. There was a special 113th issue, and then was extinct. Harris was the heir apparent to the Warren Empire and resurrected Vampirella in short order. Brand new comics started to debut in the 90s. And wouldn't you know it, the bad girls craze was just beginning, and Vampirella was back to capitalize on it. Move over Lady Death, move over She, move over Witchblade. You owe all your success to the original daughter of Drakulon. This particular series, Vengeance of Vampirella, was the newest limited series after her return, simply titled Vampirella. And this begins the 25-issue run of Vengeance of Vampirella, which would close out the 90s. But back in the 90s, we had this undead bad girl to titillate us into buying comic books, published at the moment by Harris Comics. Let's talk about the cover. So here we have, because it's the 90s, 1994, we've got a foil cover. So we got an amazing gimmick cover here, foil. We got some red foil on the name Vampirella, as well as the splash of blood. But wait a minute, it's the 90s. Why have one gimmick when you can have two? How about a wraparound cover? So this is a full wraparound cover with many eye-catching aspects, all in foil. I remember this cover back in the 90s. It was grotesque, it was weird, it was sexy. I never had it back in the 90s. But as a grown man, I can spend my money however I want. And what I did was I bought my own copy of Vampirella, Vengeance of Vampirella #1 foil. Anyway, get your mind out of the bloody gutter. As we move on to the interior art. Okay, here we've got the credits on page 3, which are pretty fun. They do the convention of comic book writing, where we've got Sanguinary Scribe, Time Snygoski, Blood-Stained Pencils and Inks by Buzz, Carnage Colored by Kevin Horn and Rod Perez, Lethal Lettering by Kevin Cunningham, and then Editorial Execution by M. Crawford Chadwick. So there's our creative team, No Palmiotti and Quesada art on the inside. We've got these other artists. Now, spoiler alert, I think the art is not as good as it could be. It definitely feels 90s. And there's a few parts in here that are quite cringy, plot-wise. We have some voiceover from Vampirella. A big adventure in Europe had just happened back on Vampirella Volume 1 from 1991, where she battled Dracula. And so here she is back in the big city, and then there's some troll that is killing children. So she cannot have that. And so the very first action that we see here is this troll battling Vampirella, a very stinky troll, according to the narration. She first slashes his face and then goes in for the coup de grace right here with all that glorious color. Do not mess with Vampirella. Here we start to see a sense of the good stuff and the bad stuff regarding the art. Some of this is just a color with a little bit of Photoshop gradient, and there's a really weird speed lines coloring over here, where some of the better stuff is like this cool pose over here with Vampirella taking out her knife. We need a close-up of that, of course. And then this previous splash page is pretty cool. The purple smoke, her posing, and the troll beat up. And, of course, that eye-catching part right there, where we are mimicking the close-up shot here of the knife protruding and then proceeding. So we're going to see that back and forth, some good and some not so good art throughout the issue. I kind of feel it leans more towards the not so good, unfortunately. One of the ones that I do like is this nice macabre scene right here with all of these little beasties joining together to some council where we talk about Vampirella being a big problem for them. We get some other trolls and werewolves and get this weird guy with his eyes sewn shut. This weird, amazing skeleton ghost creature thing. I love the design on this one. This guy over here is pretty dumb. Werewolf's all right. They enjoy a little snack over here, some hors d'oeuvres. Poor little rat. Very basic gradient colors back here. Gradient. Who needs backgrounds? And they talk about, Vampirella is a big problem for us, so we're going to hire someone to take care of her. So anyway, who is the hunter that they're going to hire that is worse than an unnatural? In this world, we are the naturals and they are the unnaturals. Anyway, who are we hiring? Hemorrhage. This is actually kind of a really cool concept for this character. Kind of gross and interesting. He is a sanguinomancer, one that can control the blood. So we get this, creepy guy talking to some girl out of panel. Then we see her. Okay, what's wrong with her? Oops, she's kind of like bleeding everywhere. And wait a minute. He is able to telekinetically control her blood flow and turn it into blood sculptures. And with bad puns and such. Honestly, that's kind of a scary power to have, able to control your blood as long as you give him some access to it. We get a phone call in a vintage telephone here, and so he loses his concentration with a vicious panel over here. This one's so eye-catching. And so basically here he is being hired. So back to Vampirella. She goes back to her lover, Adam. Is it that Adam? Maybe. And she takes out that troll, and her version of justice is, okay, he was killing the children, so, okay, she killed the troll, and she put his head on a pike so that all the parents would be happy that the scourge is gone. Never mind that they're all traumatized from seeing a decapitated head of a troll at a children's playground. Yikes. Read the room, Vampirella. Anyway, so Rella is still shook from her battle with Dracula in Europe, and she is now feeling she is different than ever and needs to find herself, so she needs to leave Adam. This is an example of kind of a cool couple of panels, but a couple of the details ruin it a bit, like putting her hands up on the glass here, where we should see some shadows. The coloring is really weird there. Even the anatomy of that hand is kind of weird. But if you can ignore that, I like this succession of panels where she reveals some plot points. We don't really get any good transitions between scenes like a meanwhile, which is a bit annoying here and there. But meanwhile, we see Hemorrhage going to the dark and scary graveyard where the telephone was back there, I suppose. The werewolf guy jumps out at him, but judging by that cocky expression, this werewolf is in trouble. And he is. There's this amazing battle, which isn't even a battle. As soon as Hemorrhage can do a little bit of bloodletting, he can get his sanguinomancy in action. And what does he do? He chokes him to death with his own blood. Freaking epic. I love it. But wait a minute, the coup de grace? How about a silver bullet to finish the job? So the macabre council is quite impressed, and they're going to hire him to take out Vampirella. So, moving on. And then again, we got the amazing Dave Stevens art. This is better than Frazetta, some would say. Tell me in the comments, would you say Dave Stevens renders a better than Frazetta Vampirella? Is that blasphemy? Tell me in the comments. Which takes us back to that atrocious screen over here with some ugly green Photoshop coloring, totally awkward here and there, and just... what is this weird green blurs? Are we blurring out his nudie mags in the corner? And that's why we've got this weird green mist? And then we're trying to do these transitions without actual panels. And in between, we're looking at our beverage, bourbon, I guess, and Vampirella's there. This is Pendragon, one of the cast of Vampirella's characters. We have Adam, Pendragon, etc. Yeah, this page, I can't take it. Okay, so moving on. Hemorrhage is moving in. Vampirella is packing up with some cute outfits. Hemorrhage runs into somehow, I guess, here. This is not at all makes sense to me. A guy walking his dog, he suddenly falls. I get a sense that he ran into him, kind of. And then he falls as well as the dog. But this then gives us a chance for more grotesquerie where Hemorrhage declares he needs more raw materials. And so what does he do? He breaks the dog's neck, causes it to bleed. And what's going to come after that once Hemorrhage has access to the blood? We'll find out soon enough. We get a little bit more tender moments between Vampirella and Adam with some terrible backgrounds, a little embrace. That embrace, of course, is going to become more than just an embrace. Tricky guy. But before we get to that part, this is cool. Hemorrhage has created a blood puppy out of that poor little doggy and, I guess, further from the blood of the owner. And he's going to send that blood doggy over to scope things out with Vampirella. So anyway, we have the crash, and Vampirella runs to the rescue, uttering her Thor-esque dialogue, "Satyr and Circe! Do you smell it, Adam? It's blood, Adam." The overpowering scent of blood. And then the blood doggy is there messing with Pendragon. Tune in next issue for the thrilling conclusion. Pretty cool final panel here. Actual effort on the background. Even some foreground element here. So, nice ending panel here. Although I would have rather preferred a nice ending panel of Vampirella, the star of the comic. But you get what you can. And then the book ends with an end. And that was Vengeance of Vampirella, #1, published by Harris Comics in 1994. But now I'd like to hear from you. Did you ever read Vengeance of Vampirella Volume 1 back in the 90s? Did you ever read Vampirella the magazine back in the 70s? Tell me in the comments. Do you remember the dry times when Vampirella was extinct in the 80s? Are you all in on Vampirella in the 21st century? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget, the new home of my uncensored videos will be found on Patreon, patreon.com/vmcampos. All the really good stuff that I had to cut out because of that darn algorithm can be found uncut, uncensored on Patreon. Check it out. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this video. This has been the weekly VM Campos Comic Book Club, and I'll see you next week.